Okay, it's half past the hour. There will still be people coming into the room, but we're going to get going right away. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our gold sponsor, Watchful, for helping make this JoomlaDay USA possible, including all the other great sponsors that we have. Thank you very much for your sponsorship this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever you are. We have Johan Janssen here, who is one of the founding founders of Joomla, and this really exciting presentation that he's got going for you here. It's building a Joomla site using Joomlatools Pages. I can't tell you enough how great this is, but I'm going to let Johan tell you himself all about it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get off the stage. If you double click on his screen, it will go large for you. And if you have a question that you would like Johan to answer at the end of his presentation, we'll try to get 10 or 15 minutes at the end. We'll take those questions as we can and let Johan answer them. I'll jump back up on the stage at the end of his presentation so that we can do the Q&A. Johan, thank you so much for making yourself available today. I'm going to leave the stage and it's all yours.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, this is my first time using OBS, and I have set it up in many different ways. We will figure out if it's all going to work. We're going to try to switch between all the screens that I have here on a 30 big ass inch. Okay, to get started, two parts to this presentation. The first part is 10-15 minutes, a little bit of introduction, introducing some contexts and some concepts. If there are questions, just put them in the chat. I see them come by. I totally agree with that. OBS is really awesome and open source. And the second part, I will try to do a live demo and a little bit of live coding in this session. It's going to be interesting to see if that works, but we will try nonetheless. So first part. Session is called Everything is a Remix. And this is a little bit what Pages is all about. Pages is not a component that offers any specific features to Joomla. It's something that integrators and developers are going to use to remix different things together. You're going to be able to remix data from different sources. You can remix components. You can create your own teams. It's kind of like a big toolbox for developers and integrators. Also going to try to show you why I'm building this and how I'm building it to make it so simple as possible for everybody to use. Now, first the question. If Joomla would be about food, and I think that Joe will probably put it into the poll, would it be a cookbook? Would it be a soup kitchen, or would it be a restaurant? I'm not going to answer it now. I'll answer it later, probably at the end of the sessions during the Q&A, but think about it while the session goes on. Some of the hints to this question might be coming up in this session. Okay, good. Let's dive in. So this is a great quote from Mary Shelby. Mary Shelby wrote a preface for the book Shakespeare in the 1900s. And in that book, in that preface, she writes, "Invention, it must be humbly admitted, does not consist in creating out of a void, but out of chaos." And that's really what free software is all about. We're not creating things out of nothing, right? We are taking a lot of code and a lot of ideas from a lot of different people. And as the famous quote said, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. For that, I have a little video for you.
The act of creation is surrounded by a fog of myths. Myths that creativity comes via inspiration, that original creations break the mold, that they're the products of geniuses and appear as quickly as electricity can heat a filament. But creativity isn't magic. It happens by applying ordinary tools of thought to existing materials. And the soil from which we grow our creations is something we scorn and misunderstand, even though it gives us so much. And that's copying. Put simply, copying is how we learn. We can't introduce anything new until we're fluent in the language of our domain. And we do that through emulation. For instance, all artists spend their formative years producing derivative work. Bob Dylan's first album contained 11 cover songs. Richard Pryor began his stand-up career doing a not very good imitation of Bill Cosby. And Hunter S. Thompson retyped The Great Gatsby just to get the feel of writing a great novel. Nobody starts out original. We need copying to build a foundation of knowledge and understanding. And after that, things can get interesting.
So this is where we start off from. Everything is a Remix. It's a great video series that you can find online at everythingisaremix.info, and there's a lot more to this series. But that video captures very well what free software and free software development and innovation and development and creation and making is all about. It's not about creating something new, something that doesn't exist. It's about copying existing ideas, transforming and combining them into something. And that is specifically what the GPL, which is the license that Joomla is based on, is all about. Like, a lot of people see the GPL as a legal document. It's something that says what you cannot do and what you should allow for. But to me, it's a creativity manifesto. It embraces the idea that everything is a remix and perpetuates that to the freedom of use, study, modify, and copy. And the last two are like the idea that you can copy somebody's code, you can make smaller changes to it, and you can make that work for your own problem, for your own idea, so that you don't need to start from scratch or from a little, but you can actually start already from a lot. And that idea sits very deeply embedded into Joomla. Joomla means all together, and we chose that name for a very, very specific reason. It means all people together, but it equally means all code together. It's the total sum of all the works that Joomla developers create that make up Joomla. It's not just that little piece of core, because the core, in the sense, is it's a very nimble and small piece of technology. There are 8,000 extensions that altogether make up what Joomla is all about. So framing that into Joomlatools Pages, well, Pages is something that I've been playing with now for 3 years, and the idea actually started very simply. We were using Jekyll for our own website, not Joomla, and I wanted to go back to Joomla, but I needed something that gave me the power and the performance of a static site generator and combine that with the power of Joomla as a dynamic web application. So that's what Pages is all about. It's not a static site generator. It works dynamically, lazy, and it's quite smart, and we'll try to show you a little bit how that works. And Pages is also not something that has a backend user interface. It actually leans upon all the work done by all the developers creating awesome components and can tap into those components. It's data source agnostic, which means you can use it with any Joomla component, but you could also use it with a headless CMS system or a web service like Airtable or Google Sheets or anything that basically can give you data, and then you can use Pages to render that data on your site. Now, this is where I left off a couple months ago when I gave a talk for the Joomla conference at Joomla Shack. And that's where I explained that Pages is basically a no-code MVC. And to explain that a little bit, this is what code in Pages looks like. The top block that you see is what we call the front matter, and the lower part is the actual code. So Pages is a lot of information into one page of code. In Joomla, that top collection part would be considered the model. If you create a menu item, it's quite similar to creating a menu item and saying what that menu item should show. And the lower block is the template. That's actually your layout, your theme, your template that you use to render the HTML. Pages combines all that into a single piece of code. Why am I trying to do this? Because it makes things very, very simple. it brings everything together, and you don't need to go look anymore where functionality sits or where functionality comes from or how something works. And that was, for me, the thing that got me into Mambo. When I started using Mambo about, I think it's more than 20 years ago now, the early 2000s, first time I got in contact with Mambo. What I liked so much about it was that you could see from the code how it worked. And that idea that you could copy a piece of code from somebody, you could put it into your site, and it started to work. You didn't have to install anything. You didn't have to go through any additional steps. You could just take a piece of code, a module, a component, a template, and you put it into your own site, and it would just work. That same idea and that same ease of development and ease of use, I'm trying to bring into Pages. I think we lost it a little bit down the road. Like 10 years later, we have built an enormous amount of user interface and interactions that people can easily use Joomla. But for a developer, it has not become easier to extend Joomla. It actually has become harder. There are more steps that you need to take to get your code running. So the idea that you could just copy a piece of code from somebody else that you receive even over a chat message, you can put it into your site and it would just start working. That idea is locality of behavior. And that idea was brought forward by Richard Gabriel. And he says the primary feature of easy maintenance is locality. Locality is the characteristic of source code that enables a programmer to understand that source by looking at only a small portion of it. And that's the idea behind Pages. I want to make it so that by looking at the code, you get an idea what it does. So the code needs to be very, very simple and very easy to understand. It's not PHP. It's a sort of abstraction of that that allows you to understand how it works and then modify it from there as the GPL allows you to make it work for you. So this is an example that I gave a couple of months ago. This is a rendering of a list of web links with Joomlatools Pages. At the top, you see the title of the page. You see the route for the page, which is the actual URL that will be used. And then you see the collection definition that defines where the data is coming from. In this case, the data is coming from the Joomla web links table. And Pages is just going to talk to that table directly and get data out. We're going to filter the data and say only want the published web links. We're going to make the data also available under 2 additional formats, CSV and JSON. And then we have a little bit of HTML and PHP code, which is our template that just renders that list. And that's it. This piece, I can copy paste to anybody of you. And if you would put it into your site, it would just start working. So I've already tried to write a little bit more about Pages and what Pages is, and try to frame it a little bit better. A little piece that might be interesting for you is Pages as a just-in-time page generator. You can find it on GitHub. If you go to GitHub, Joomlatools Pages discussions, you will find this text. And there's also one about standing on the shoulder of components, which I did a couple of days ago. So there we are. So to give you that idea what Pages is, so the whole goal of it is to make it very, very easy to build solutions with Joomla by copy pasting each other's code and making modifications to that. So Pages doesn't require anything to be installed besides the component itself. And from there, everything is copy pastable. So there is no installation steps. There is no database requirements. You can just get started from there. If there are any questions from this, let me know. And otherwise, we will, thank you, Sassi. We will dive into a little bit of demo, right? For that, let's see what we're going to demo. So when you install Joomla, there is a set of demo data that you can install, which is called the blog demo data, which is a very basic set of demo data. When you install it, it looks a little bit like this. So what I've done yesterday is I installed this demo data on a site, and we're going to transform that into this. Nothing too fancy, but I'm going to just show you by walking you through some code examples how this actually works and how easy it is to copy paste code around. Okay, now, if everything goes well, we need to be able to go to the code. Okay, is this readable for everybody? I tried to make it bigger. If it's not readable, just let me know, because otherwise it could become a little bit. Yes, it is. Thank you. So I'm going to move that over here, and then we will do some coding. So when you install, thank you, Brent. So when you install the demo set, this is what you get. This is the site, and this is the result of that demo set. You can scroll through it, nothing more, nothing here. There's a couple of menu items that are available, and there's a front page. There's one specific menu item here that we will be using later, which is called, which is the login menu item. I'm referring to it because I'm going to redo this login and show you how it can actually continue to use Joomla components with Pages and Pages reps itself. So where we're going to start with, well, this is a blog theme or a blog data set, but it doesn't really have a blog menu item. There's only a front page. So what we're going to do is we're going to create that. So go back to code. Where is my code? There we are. So first of all, let me walk you through this. What you see here on the left is the project overview, and there's a couple of folders. When you install Pages, you create your own Joomlatools Pages folder in your site root. And then from there, there's a couple of folders that Pages will create for you, or folders that you will add. The ones we're not going to worry about is cache, because that's created for you. Extensions is where you put your extensions into. This is also something that Mark is going to talk about. I'll quickly show that in a bit. The most important one we want to worry about is Pages, this one. This is actually where your pages go into. This is nothing harder or more difficult than what you were used to working with Dreamweaver. And I hope that somewhere down the road, long ago, you have used Dreamweaver. This is that. You are going to create files here. And then you're going to tell those files what to do. What we're going to do is we're going to create a blog. I have already pre-created some stuff, otherwise I don't have enough time. But we're going to go here. We're going to create a blog folder, because what we want in our site is we want to be able to have a blog, a /blog URL. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a blog folder, and in that blog folder, we're going to create an index.html.php file. That is the file. So there's not much happening here. We're going to define our route, explain that in a bit. We're going to create a name for this page, because we're going to use that in our menu items, a title, a description, and then we're going to define a collection. The collection defines where the data is going to come from. This data is going to come from Joomla articles. We're going to limit it by 2, so we're only going to show 2. We're only going to show the published articles, certain date, descending, and the category that we're going to use is blog. There are 2 categories in this site. One category is undefined, and the other category is blog. So I only want to have the blog articles. And then there's a little bit of code here to render this. No front page to be exact. Exactly, yeah, that's even further back. So there's a little bit of code here. I'm only going to worry right now about this part here, which is the part, and that one. If you see that highlighted, this is where the actual articles are going to get listed. So what I have already done is I already created a partial. A partial is a piece of code that you can reuse, and that is being important here. And that partial sits here, so you immediately know what a partial is. It's just a little piece of HTML. If I take the list partial, so I find partials and then a list. If I take the list partial, then this partial is rendering a list of articles. It basically goes here through all the articles and then renders them out. Right? That's everything that is happening. And here at the bottom, there is pagination being rendered. through a pagination helper. I'm not going to go in all detail, but basically this is just rendering a list of articles with a little bit of CSS. The CSS we're using here is Tailwind because it makes it quite easy for you, for me to put some CSS on the. All right, so we have our list. We have our page. We're going to import this partial, and we're going to inject a variable. The variable is called articles, and we're basically going to inject our whole collection in there, which is this collection. So what's going to happen? Page is going to fetch the data, and it's going to inject that data into the articles variable into this partial, and then it's going to get rendered. Now, if all goes well, and that's always the tricky part with demos that are live, you should see something interesting happening now. All right, here we are. So this is what we have just done. Like we have welcome to our blog, about our homepage, and then there is a little bit of pagination at the bottom here that shows the paginator that I can go to the next page. There's only like 4 blog posts, so I could just go to the next one, and then it will create the next page. The images that are being loaded, they're loading a little bit slow. The reason they're loading slow is because they're coming from Pixum, which is an online free photo service. So I'm basically just like rendering free images because the sample data that Joomla provides doesn't include the images. So here we are. That's it. Now the thing is, this doesn't really look nice, right? So we're just rendering this in our Joomla template, and this is what you can do. You could just basically create a page like you have done here, define a collection, and then just render data in your Joomla template, define the HTML for it, and your template will do the rest. I want to take this one step further. I want to take it out of the Joomla template and into our own team so we can get rid of the template itself. Now, that is not that hard. We're going to define a layout. And the layout in this case is called index. Now, I'll show you what layout is. There's a folder here called layouts. There's an index layout in here. This is your index layout. Really, really simple. Really easy to copy paste because it's always the same. This is just an HTML page. This is just the basis of an HTML page. This is what an HTML page always looks like. You have your HTML element, your header, your body, and you have some placeholders where title, metadata, link, style scripts, and other information. The only thing I'm doing here is I'm including the CSS, the Tailwind CSS for this basic theme that I basically copy pasted online. It's a very, very basic Tailwind theme that somebody created. Okay, so what we did here is saving this page. If all goes well now, this should look quite different. As in, it should have removed the Joomla. There we are. So our Joomla template is now completely gone. It's not being used anymore. How does that work? It's really simple. Pages knows that, where is my, there. Pages knows that the moment that it finds an HTML element in the output, that it should render that and not render it inside the Joomla template. So because Pages finds out that, okay, we're rendering actually a complete web page, a complete HTML page, it's not going to inject the result back into Joomla. It's actually going to render it itself. So what we still have here is actually these things that we still have a working, we still have a working site. Because I only added an additional menu item that Pages is handling, or an additional URL, the existing menu items that Joomla provides are still completely working. But we're staying here. Now, this is great, but not so great. This is not doing much, so I want to have a little bit of a header, and I would like to dress this up a little bit. So we're going to create a little bit more of an advanced layout, and this one is called default. Now, This default layout basically provides the actual structure and the layout for my site. What it does is it will render a header, it will render navigation, which is here. It will render the main content, and it will render the footer. This is where layouts are really used for. They basically provide the structure of your site, and that allows you to easily change how your site is structured. The great thing about layouts is that they inherit from each other. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, okay, for my blog, I want to use the default layout, and the default layout in itself is extending from the index layout. They fit inside each other like Russian dolls fit inside each other, or like you would peel an onion in a sense. So the index layout fits itself around the default layout, which fits itself around the blog. And that works quite simple. I'll show you where index goes. So this is where pages will inject the content from the child layout or the child page. So this is where the actual content is being injected. For default, it works here. It will inject it into the main content element. So that's happening here. Now, okay, let's refresh this. Then we get this, right? So now we have a title, we have a start of a menu system. I'll explain in a bit. We have a header, and we have our 2 articles, and we have a footer. Now, where does everything come from? Well, the header is simple. This is just defined here. This is just our site name. Our site name comes from our configuration. The configuration is here. So I have a config file that allows you to like add a whole bunch of configuration options. And here I have an option site and then name, and this is my site name. You can basically put anything in this configuration and get to it. There are other ways of doing configuration that are out of scope a bit, but this is the basis how configuration is done. There's a bunch of configuration options that Pages provides that you can see here. I'll explain those, some of those in a bit. So site name is coming from here. Then we are rendering our navigation. Our navigation is rendering a partial, which is a menu partial. That partial is basically going to render the little menu on top. Partial is very simple. We are including the partial, and we're telling it that we only want to have one level. And the partial is here. So this is what the partial does. It will get a pages collection on top. So it's basically going to collect all the pages in the site that I'm creating. It's only going to take the first level because we only want to have one level, and it's going to filter them for visible is not equals false. Why am I doing that? Because some of these pages I don't want to have in my menu. So how can I tell Pages that I don't want to have a certain page in the menu? By adding a property to the page, which I call visible. It could be anything, but in my case, I prefer to use visible. Pages will recognize any properties that you add to a page. I call it visible, and I say not equals false. So if a page has visible false, it will not be included. We will show in a bit how that works. And then we just have a list of pages that comes out, and we're just going to render them here and with the name of the page, and then we're going to route the page. So this is the router in action. You basically give it the page entity, and it routes it for you. And that's a list, and that's it. So going back to our default layout, so this is where my menu is being handled. Then here is where the main content goes in. And this is where my footer goes. Footer is also quite simple. Footer is another partial. We have a footer partial. We also call that navigation. And this is the footer partial. For the footer, we're doing it a little bit different. We're not taking the footer links from the actual pages because some of these links are not actual pages. They're just links. Like here, if I go down, and I'm not sure you will see it, so I will go to browser. If I go down here, this one here, created by Joomla Tools, is just a link to Joomlatools. If I click it, I will go to Joomlatools. So I don't want to have a page for that. So back to the code. How do we do that? We have something called data in Pages. Data are simply structured files, structured data files. They can be anything. YAML, JSON, any CSV. You can do whatever you want with them. So we created a data folder. That one is fixed. It always needs to be here. In there, we created a navigation folder that you can choose. This is where this comes from, navigation. And then we have a footer file. And in that footer file, we just created a little bit of JSON. So we have two menu items. One is called contact, which is going to be routed to the contact page. And the other one is called created by Joomlatools.com. And this is just a URL. And our partial in our footer handles that. It will route it here. So it will do either the item has a route, then route it, or if not, it's going to be a URL, and then just use it, the URL, and put a nofollow on it. And that's basically your footer. You could add as many footer menu items as you want here, and they will just appear. So the concept here is that there is a concept of data in Pages, and data are fixed static files where you can put all sorts of stuff into. And in this case, I'm using it for the footer, but you can also use it for configuration. You could use it for any data on your site that you don't want to put into an article or in a module because it's too small for that, but you want to be able to easily edit it at some point. So then you can put it into a data. Okay, so that's it. This is great. And then there is still this one, the blog. Now, where is that coming from? We have something really nice. This is coming from this blog here. I'm not sure that you see it. Yes. Okay, so Pages can integrate with Joomla modules. And the very basic use case I'm showing you here is how you can inject a module on the fly. What I'm doing here is I'm basically defining a module position on the fly. This module position is called main header because it's the header of my main container. I have created a little bit of HTML in here, which is rendering the header. And I have created the position. And then here is where the content should go. Now, what I want is I want to be able to inject content in that from another page. And I don't want to be able to do it here because then I need to do switch statements and a lot of code to figure out what needs to be rendered when. I want to be able to do it from my blog. In my blog page, I have this. This is basically the blog page saying, hey, in the position main header, inject the following header element, the H1 element, with the title of this page, and also inject the summary with the summary of this page. So to show you that this is not hocus pocus, let's just description for a very awesome blog, right? Let's change that, and this is not pre-recorded. There we are. So description for a very awesome blog. So Pages is injecting that into our layout. Now, if I would take this away, right? So what we want right now is that this thing disappears like that. And the reason that is happening is because Pages handles these modules in a smart way. We have wrapped it here. So we're basically saying, Pages is basically saying, if there is nothing in this position, then don't render this because there is nothing into it. I could do that a little bit different and have it always render the header, but I'm choosing not to, so that when the page doesn't inject anything, there is no header being rendered. Okay. So this is great. Final step, we always want to have a nice sidebar. So we want to have something happening at the right side here. Where is the browser? So The right side is still quite empty, so I want to have something on the right side next to my blog, which is where modules would normally go. So how are we going to do that? We're going to create a little bit more of a complex layout, which we call sidebar. This is our sidebar layout. Sidebar layout is going to extend from the default layout and is going to wrap itself around, again, as a little onion. And this sidebar is going to have two asides. One aside is going to be a list of categories, and the other aside is going to be the latest blog posts. Again, this is very, very simple. I'm getting a collection here from the Joomla categories, and I'm basically saying, give me all the categories that are published and show me in a descending order, and then just render them as a list. And the same thing for the latest blog posts. But here, what I'm doing is I'm actually extending upon the existing collection. So here, I'm talking to a specific model. I'm basically talking to this model, which is then directly going to talk to the database, which is great. Here, I'm talking to the existing blog collection, and I'm referencing that collection by the name of the page. Now we have a blog page. Well, we have a blog here, and in there we have an index.html, which is actually our blog. We're reusing this collection definition, and we're reusing it here. The only difference is that I'm now telling pages to not use a limit. Show me all of them, and not limit it. The default limit is 2, but we're not limiting it. And then just render and route them. Use the slug, and then route them. So let's go here. And then we're going to just change this layout to sidebar. And if all goes well and there is no hocus pocus, there we are. So now go to browser. There you are. Then you can see that I have added 2 sidebars here, which you could consider 2 modules. It's also perfectly possible, but I don't have this in this demo. I wanted to keep it simple, but it's also perfectly possible to actually use existing modules and inject them in here. What I created was I created a module on the fly. That's something that Pages can do, which is a more easy way of doing an HTML module. But Pages can also use existing Joomla modules and just render them. Okay, great. Now, we only have 20 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start enabling a bunch of pages that I have prepared, and then walk through some of those and show you some more of the things that Pages can do. So for a site, we always need an about page. So where's my code? There we are. Actually, totally loving how OBS works. It's super easy. So we need an about page. We need a contact page. Let's add that. What else do we want? Let's also create a little index page. Show that in a bit. Let's first show you those. All right. So we have our blog page, and now I added the contact page. Pages recognizes them and adds it, and the about page. I'll show you the about page first. This is the about page. About page is super simple. How often do you have that use case where, hey, I want to use just a single article from my Joomla site and I want to use it somewhere? And about pages are all about that, right? It's always a little bit of an article with a little bit of information. You want to have that article editable, but want to show it here. So this is our about page. And that about page is very, very simple. We have a name, a title, a little summary, and then we're importing partial, which is going to render a single article. And the article that is going to render is about us. So there's a function in Pages that is called article, which is able to just like fetch a single article. Now it can fetch that article by the article ID, which is how it normally does. So normally it would be a number, it's the ID of the article. But you can also give that article an alias. And you could do that through the configuration. This makes it easier to understand, okay, what article am I rendering again, if you set it up. So there is this solution for aliases. This is happening here. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically saying, okay, the model articles collection has aliases, and about us is an alias for ID 1. So Pages now knows that it needs to fetch article 1 here, which is the one that is rendering here. Now, to show you quickly that I'm not, where am I? So quickly, before you go, like, this is all great, but can I still like edit all of this stuff? So let's go to browser. There we are. Let's go to articles. Then about. Okay, great. So we're in the backend of Joomla. And yes, we can still edit it all. And it works. So if I'm not lying, we should now see this happening here, right? So again, I'm not trying to replace Joomla. I'm basically just like tying into it. In this case, we're tying into the Joomla articles component, but you can make this work for any component that exists today. You can talk directly to their database tables. That gives you their raw data, already works. In this case, we're using an extension for Pages, which is a special Joomla extension that we have built. Mark will be talking more about that in his presentation. And that extension simply sits here. I go back to code. That extension simply sits in the extensions folder. It's called the Joomla extension. This you can download and copy paste in place, and it will just work. You don't need to install anything. You don't need to go to the Joomla installer. You just copy it there, and it will start. So here we are. Okay, so we have an about. We also need a contact. So we also need a way for people to send us an email. What we would normally do is we would normally install a form component to be able to do that. But forms are so simple to build. So why would we install a component for that if we can just like code a little form in HTML? So here's our contact page, and this is our form. The form has a name, a first name, a last name, an email, and a message. What is happening here is that we have a collection page type, but we also have a form page type, and this is the form. What I'm doing here is I'm naming the form. I'm adding two processors. The processors are defining how this form will work. The first processor is a CSV processor. It's just going to log any form submissions. And the second processor is an email processor. It's going to send an email out to a recipient, in this case, hello@pages.test, with information about this email. So basically, the email, the form is submitted, and then an email is sent out with the information of that form. Now, forms, of course, need to be validated, and this is the validation. First name is a string and is required. Last name is a string and is required. Email and message are email is an email is required. String, a message is a string is required. And then we have a redirect to a thank you page to let the user know that the form was successfully submitted. And then we have a honeypot. This basically keeps bots and spam bots and everything away. I'm using this approach on Joomlatools now for more than a year, and I had absolutely zero spam coming in through our contact forms on our site. It basically spoofs the form into believing that there is an additional field to be filled in, and then the bot tries to fill it in, and then Pages basically says, hey, this is not an acceptable submission, and filters it out. So we have a contact form. Everything is here. So let's test it. First thing here is we have logs, because it's going to log something in here for our, which is our CSV, and it's also going to send an email. And to test that, I have a little tool installed. But first, let me show you the thank you page. This is the thank you page. Thank you page is not visible because we don't want to have it end up in our menu. It's also no index and no follow, because we don't want Google to follow it. It's just a page that is there that should be used when somebody submits. So we're going to go to browser, then you can see all the magic happening. And then this is where the moment of truth comes in. Here. These send it to someone. Okay, so if all goes well, this should just work. Now, I have a tool here called Mailhawk, which will intercept the email. It's a testing tool for emails. It's something that you can install on your server, and it will intercept emails that are being sent. It allows you to do email testing. So there is nothing here, as you can see. If all goes well, the email that I'm going to send should end up here. Now, fingers crossed. Everything so far has gone well. We have been redirected to the thank you page, which is great. Then we also see, I go back to code, you also see that a contact.csv file has been created, and my email or my submission has been logged here. And now I go here, and then if all goes well, there we are. This is the email that has also been sent out. And this is the little HTML that Pages out of the box creates. You can change this with a parcel if you want to, but this is the basics, just the name, last name, email, message. Any fields that you add to your form will automatically end up here. You don't need to worry about it. It just understands the fields and will start adding them. Okay, so, that was our contact page. Then one more, quickly. So I want to add a login. I want to be able to log in into the site from the front end. Now, I'm not going to rebuild my own login system because Joomla already provides that, and it does that quite well. So I want to integrate the login into my site. So I have created a login page for that. Now, this is where one of the very interesting new features of Pages come in, which is what we call decoration. I'm actually going to reuse the login menu item. So let me first do it like this. So let's go to login here. So this is our login page. If you'll see it here, this is our login page. This is the Joomla login page. I want to make this a Pages login page that fits into my template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a page with the same name. So it's going to be called login, which is the same name, the same URL it will follow. Then I'm going to route it to use login and everything behind it, and also logout, because there's also a logout menu item in the sample data, and also logout. I'm going to tell it to use the default layout, and I'm going to say, and this is special, I'm going to say decorate is true, which basically means don't use Joomla, but use Pages to render and inject the result back here. Okay, so if all goes well, this should show a login form. There we are. All right, so this is the login form browser. This is the login form. What I have done to clean this up a little bit is I added a little bit of custom styling here. Just to quote, there we are, custom styling here to nicely style the login page. This styling you can also put into your actual page. What Pages will do is it will take the style block and inject it in the header of your page. So this is not going to end up somewhere in between your code. It's actually nicely going to be injected in the header of your page, which, well, I'm not going to show it, a little bit too hard, but well, I could actually. Let's show you the header of the page. So here we are, header. Here's my style block, see, in the head. And here is that style block that it has injected. So that allows you, again, this is that locality principle. It allows you to put everything together into a single page, and then Pages will figure out from there where it all needs to go. Okay, so does this work? Yes, it works. Logging in. There we are. Now it redirects me, of course, to the front end of my site, and I haven't done anything with that front end yet, with that front end page. So this is still Joomla doing its thing. This actually also shows how you can mix and match pages. You can use Pages to create microsites with a single Joomla installation. You could have different subfolders or even subdomains to a single Joomla site, and Pages will then handle them for you. You can set up a different team per site. You can use a different template per site and let Pages handle that. You can mix and match it as you please. Let's take this away quickly. So we're going to go in our code. we're going to create an index file, which is basically just the index file, and then this should go away. And there we are, right? So this is not going to explain this because we're running out of time. There's a few more things I want to show, but this is basically just an index, a homepage that I created. It shows a list of articles, and again, uses the same sidebar layout and everything. So we are here. If I now go to login, it should give me the logout because I'm still logged in. So let's go here. You can actually see, oops, the browser. Yeah, you can actually see there are two articles visible here. Welcome to our blog and about your homepage. The second article about your homepage is only visible to logged in users. And this is what I wanted to show you. Here are the images. It takes always a while for them to come in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to log out. And then, as you can see, I'm redirected to the homepage, and this is only one article visible, which is the about. Okay, a few more things while we're at it. When we have a blog, we also want to have RSS because we want to have a feed. That's no problem. Go back to the code. We create an index.rss, so Pages can work with different formats. You can do HTML, which is what we have been doing, but you can also do RSS. So RSS is super simple. Pages renders it for you using a built-in RSS template. So you use that, and then you just tell it to reuse the blog collection, because I'm extending from blog, and just limit this by 10. Show me the last 10 blog posts. Don't show this in the menu because we don't want to have it there. And there you are. You have RSS. Now, what I'm also doing is to clean it all up and to make it all work properly. I'm also adding a link to the head that is an alternate, that defines an alternate relation to this RSS. This is because feed readers will find it there and then be able to syndicate your RSS if you still know how all that works, because that's already technology from a couple of years ago. We could do the same thing. We did RSS, but what about APIs? What about turning this website, this blog, into a web service? No problem. We can output the data that sits in the database as JSON, and this is not just JSON. This is JSON API. JSON API is one of the standards that is used by Drupal. Uses it. I saw that Joomla 4 in the core also has one integration now. WordPress uses it. It's basically used by everybody. It's the de facto standard next to GraphQL for handling web APIs. So what I did was simple. I created index.json.php file, extending from blog, limiting by 0, and this is just all my articles. And I even individual URLs for them. So this is the individual URL for a single article, which contains the body of that article and all the information that sits in the database. You can decide which information to show here and filter it out, but it's a little bit too far to explain all that. What else do we have? Sitemap. Of course, when you do a site, you also need a sitemap. This is the sitemap. So you create a sitemap.xml file. That sitemap is going to use all the pages that you have defined. And what it's going to do is it's going to sort them by date, descending, and it's going to filter them out. If the page includes a no index or a none, which basically means that the page should never be indexed by Google, then it's not going to show up in the sitemap. If the page is a redirect, it's also not going to show up. That's basically what we're seeing here. And then there's this, and that brings me to the last part I wanted to talk about, which is caching. Some of these pages are not actual pages in Pages. They're not physical files. Some of these pages are pages that are generated on the fly. The article, an article to a blog post. If I go, where am I? To my blog, to my browser. If I go here, this URL, welcome to our blog, this page doesn't exist in Pages. It's rendered by Pages from data that it retrieves from Joomla, but it doesn't exist. So Pages doesn't know about it unless it's being cached. And this is where the caching comes in. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn our caching on. We are going to turn our caching on, and I'm going to turn it like that. So what I'm doing here right now is I'm turning on, I'm turning on the HTTP cache. So Pages is going to start doing its wonders with caching. And I'm telling it not to cache in the browser. I'll show you that in a bit, but for now, let's not cache in the browser. Now, what is going to happen is I'm going to go here. Okay. Now, we go to cache. Okay. So you see here is Pages has now cached this page. It creates an internal representation of that page, which is basically the headers of the page and the actual HTML. It's all being cached, and it adds a whole bunch of information that it needs. I'm not going to go in detail, but it has cached this page. So let's go to a page that normally wouldn't be a Pages page. Like we go to welcome to our blog. Okay, so this page doesn't exist in Pages, but it's now being cached here. And because of that, it's also going to show up in your sitemap. There you are. So now it shows up in the sitemap here, browser. So you see that in the sitemap, welcome to our blog also shows up. That's not the only thing that caching does. Caching also makes everything a lot faster. What we're seeing here, if I go to network, okay. Now I need to take out my code, the browser. So here you actually see the time that it takes to render a page when caching is available, and then it's still off. No, it's regenerated. So when caching is available, Pages will start generating cache status headers. In this case, it says regenerated identical. I have regenerated this page. The result of that regeneration is the same thing that I already had in cache, so I have not updated the cache. The reason Pages is a little bit slow right now is because when I develop, I always have my disable caching in Chrome enabled. So let's not do that anymore. So Pages can actually start using his cache here, and then you will see that this goes down to 217 milliseconds. And if we go to a individual page of 240 and 240, so it goes down by quite a bit when we're caching. This is because the page is now going to come from our cache. It still says miss because it's cached in the browser. I'll clear the browser cache. Go back, go forward. Okay. So now it says hit revalidated. So it has hit the cache, and it also has revalidated. So it has checked that this page is still valid, meaning that it hasn't changed. Okay, thank you, 3 minutes. Just want to show this a little bit. So Pages is able to figure out when something changes and then will update its internal cache. And if not, it will just send it from cache. And that's one of the tricky parts. Oh, no, I'll go here. So we have our welcome to our blog article here. Let's find it in the backend. Welcome to our blog. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an edit here. Edit it. I'm going to save that. Now, the status here was hit revalidated. Now I'm going to navigate back there. Well, it's not coming from this cache. So when I refresh it, it will say miss modified. Basically, if Pages is now figured out, and it basically shows you that the title is edited. It has now figured out that, okay, this page has been edited. So whatever is in cache is no longer valid. So I need to update the cache of it. And I will send out a proper status saying, you missed the cache. And the reason because of that was because the page was modified. Okay, and then the last part. We're going to turn on super caching. And then I'm done, Joe. the part that turns pages into a static page generator. Need this. And then this is it. And doing stuff at the last minute is always very, very, very dangerous.
It is. And Johan, we're actually out of time, but while you're typing away, I think the best use of the no time we have left, how can people get involved with Pages? What do we do now that we've been teased with this awesome system?
So Mark is going to do a present. Don't get on just bad side. Yeah, I know, Tim. So the best thing that the presentation of Mark will get you a little bit of a step back. I tried to take it a little bit forward with all the cool stuff that Pages can do. Mark will take it a step back, how to install Pages, how to install the Joomla extension, how to get going with some very, very simple code examples. Right, Mark, if he's still in the chat. And then from there, you will have a really good idea how you can get started. For the coders among you, yes, exactly. He's going to work with custom fields and explain how Pages integrates with custom fields. For the coders among you, what would be really great is that we can build more integrations with existing components. You can integrate with a component on the database, but as I'm showing here, I built a very specific integration for the Joomla content component that allows you to do a lot more than just talking directly to a database. So for coders, I'm looking for people that want to help me build integrations, and for others, go to Marcus' talk and learn a little bit more, and then you can find me on GitHub on the discussions. I'll quickly show that. If you go to GitHub.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much. I'm sorry we completely ran out of time, but this was awesome. And everybody, I totally endorse this. I've been using it myself, and I'm not really a computer back-end trained person, and I'm loving this stuff as well too. Thank you very, very much, Johan, for your presentation. And everybody, this is Pages by Joomlatools. So thanks again, Johan. Absolutely amazing what you're doing there. And everybody, you've got just a little under 15 minutes to go to your next session. So I'll look forward to bumping into you here and there and everywhere. I hope you guys have a wonderful JoomlaDay USA. And don't forget, this is going to be available as a recording, so you can go back and go through it again. I know it's a lot to absorb. Thank you very much, everyone. You have yourself a super JoomlaDay USA day today. Bye for now. And just for you, Johan, the polls in the back I did so that you could see that there was a 60-40 split between front and back enders.
Okay.
And what's the right answer for if Joomla would be about food? What's the right answer?
It's actually all three. It's all three with backend. It's I'll do cookbook, but basically it's all three. Like Joomla it's a cookbook because it's something that we all share with each other that allows everybody, like I was saying, it's a little piece of thing that you can copy paste and reuse and build upon. It's also a soup kitchen because whatever we're building, we're making available for free to others, and we're allowing those others to also participate in that cooking, right? And it's also a restaurant because again, you can make money with it. And the more interesting thing about all of it is that to have food, you actually need to have all three.
Right. Absolutely right.
You need to have a cookbook to cook and a soup kitchen and a restaurant, and you cannot go without. So yeah, Joomla is all three, and it needs all three. That's basically the message.
Awesome. Thanks again, Johan. Well, I look forward to bumping into you again real soon. You have yourself a great day.
Okay. I'm still around if anybody wants to chat. See you around, Joe. Thanks again. You guys still here? I can, like, if you have 75 minutes break, I'll quickly show the caching I wanted to finish on, if somebody is still around that wants to see that. And if not, then that's fine too. Then I'll jump out. Okay, cool, sure. Let me. Well, it's still 9. This is fine. I can whenever the room is empty, I'll go, so I can show a little bit more. I'm totally enjoying working with OBS. So where was I? I enabled the caching, and this is where Pages turns from a dynamic system into a static system, so it can start doing static caching. That actually makes it into a static site generator. The great thing about that is that static site generators, they work per site, and Pages works per page. I can statically cache a single page by defining it as such, but I'll quickly show this. So what we have done here is I enabled, now I need to get into the flow again, quick. So I enabled the caching in the code. Here, I said basically turn the HTTP caching to true. This is when Pages starts caching, and then I have added the htaccess files, and there was a question about, does this also apply to Lightspeed? Yes, because Lightspeed uses the same htaccess rules than Apache, and I wrote rules for Apache, and they also apply to Lightspeed. I haven't written them for Nginx yet, but this is actually not really hard to do. This is just a couple of rewrites. What is happening here is Pages is going to check if a certain page, Apache is going to check if a certain page exists on the file system and return it from the file system without calling Joomla. So what we have here, if I go back to the browser, so this is our home page. And when you enable this, static caching, then Pages will, and I need to go back to the code, Pages will create a folder called static. And this is where your whole site will be cached into. So now we have the index, which is, this is the actual HTML file. And this is the welcome to the blog. This is the actual HTML file that is being cached here. So if I go here, then you already see that, go browser. Then you see here that it says hit static. So it has hit the static cache. This is no longer coming from PHP or from Joomla. This is just happening to Apache. And the result of that is that you get an immense fast page. This is only 60 milliseconds to make this happen. If I redo this, it takes 22 milliseconds, right? I can keep clicking it. Now it's like 2 milliseconds because it went into the browser cache. And it's just coming from browser cache. So that's what Pages starts doing. Now, the next step in this process is how can you make this even faster, right? How can you make it so that when a user goes to a page that he doesn't need to wait anymore for something to load, even if that loading is super fast? By loading it in the background. And Pages has something called a prefetcher. A prefetcher is a little bit of JavaScript that is capable of loading Pages files in the background. I'll go back to code. So the prefetcher is enabled through process prefetch, and then you define the class or the ID, and it could be multiple because this is a CSS selector, from where Pages needs to look for URLs and links that it needs to preload. So it will start loading them in the background. So here I'm just using the navigation. I'm just using the navigation links in my site home, blog, contact, and about. Now, if all goes well, now I'm going to show you this in browser. Okay. Yeah, it has done it, but you don't see it yet. Wait. So we're going to do window prefetcher config. The prefetcher is a piece of JavaScript, and you can configure it through the console, which is what I'm doing now. I hope you can see that. Yes, I think you can. So I'm configuring it to turn its debug settings on, and then it should start. There we are. So now I'll move this over a little bit more. I hope you can see it. Yes, you can. So this is the prefetcher that is now initializing itself, and it's set load enabled. This is a user navigation, so I haven't done much. I go to another page. So now it says prefetched on load pages test. So it has prefetched other pages. What I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to remove all the cache so you can clearly see how it works. I'll remove all the cache and also remove the internal pages prefetcher session cache, not the config, but this thing. So this is really optimized, right? So what it does is it keeps track of all the pages that it is loaded, so it will not double load anything. So once something is being loaded in the browser cache, it will take it from the browser cache, and that loading happens in the background. So we're gonna go back to console. Here. So clear. That's okay. We'll do it this way. So maybe this page doesn't have it yet. Oops, no, not that. Okay, there we are. I need to have it. I need to do a reload on this page because the thing wasn't there yet. Okay, there we are. Now you can see it. So this is what I wanted to show you. So what Pages has now done is I have opened up the blog. The prefetcher is active. I had to refresh it a little bit until it actually loaded the JavaScript. And now it has loaded the 4 pages. It has loaded the home page, the contact, the about page, and the login. I am on blog, so that's already there. And it has loaded all the other 4 URLs. If I now go to about, this will be super fast. The request for this takes 4 milliseconds. 4 milliseconds, it's like incredibly fast because this page is coming from the local browser cache. The user will believe that this is a static, a complete web app in a sense. This is how fast it's loading. You don't have the idea anymore that it loads because it has been loaded in the background. This goes further than just that. What the prefetcher also does is it can also load links so let's go to the blog. So here we have 2 articles in our blog. Welcome to our blog and about our homepage. Those 2 articles are now being prefetched in the background on load because it's only the menu items that I'm telling the prefetcher to load. But if I go over this URL, watch, right, then you see pre-rendered on hover this URL. So what has happened now is that while I was hovering over this link, the prefetcher is going to fetch this page. It waits about 75 milliseconds before it does that, and you can configure that. So there is approximately between 150 milliseconds and 300 milliseconds between a hover over a link and a click. This is the reaction speed of the user. Now, if Pages is able to return the page over the internet in less than 150 milliseconds, it will feel as instant. And that's also what happened here, right? So this page is just there. It was loaded in the background. I can show it with another one about the homepage. So we'll go over it, and there you are. So you get this idea that, of course, it's on my local host here, but on the internet, you will feel the effect even better because the thing is being loaded for you in the background. So that turns Pages into a lot more than just a static site generator. So the only thing that you have is when you start doing this is that that you're not talking to Joomla anymore, right? So I'm talking to Apache. I can use the prefetcher only with Joomla and turn off the static cache. That will work. But then we're dealing with 100 to 250 milliseconds, so it might be a little bit too slow. But still, you can load 10 pages in the background, and it will still give you a little speed benefit. But Pages is smart enough to be able to revalidate its cache. And that's probably the last thing. That's actually a cool thing too. Let's show you console. Okay. So you can talk to the Pages cache. The Pages cache is actually a web service. And let me take it off, turn it off. I'll show you quickly. So we have a cache.json file here. And this cache.json file is exposing the cache. Right now, this is protected. Normally, this is public, but normally you would make it something that is only privately available. However, if your site is public, it doesn't really make much of a difference. In this cache, this endpoint gives you information about the complete cache. Go back to the browser. So this is just JSON API of the pages that are in cache with all the information about that page, the URL, the date, the hash, the token, the format, if the page is still valid, yes or no. All that information is being provided through an API endpoint. Okay. And then I go back to console. Now, what if you have a site? No, what if you have a page? I'll first go there. What if you have a page that is in the static cache? Homepage is coming from the static cache. What if I'm going to change this page, so I need to figure out a way to refresh it? Pages uses cache headers for that. So I could just do a hard reload on this URL, and then it will actually, as you can see here, it will actually go fetch it through PHP. Now it's going to come back with miss regenerated identical. So, okay, I missed the cache, I regenerated the page, and the result of that regeneration process is the same as the one that I had in cache. So I didn't update the cache. That's basically what Pages is saying now. Now imagine that you have 1,000 or 10,000 pages. You're not going to manually to your browser update each of those to see if they're still valid, yes or no, when you start using static caching. So you need an automated process for this. This is actually something that no static site generator can do. Gatsby cannot do it. Next.js cannot do it. None of them can. The Pages can. I can regenerate this cache using a Node.js process that we've built. And then I need to show you. This is the console. I'll take away the code. Browser and code. Can I take you away? No. Take away coding. Okay, so you see it better, right? So this is this uses Mason, and Mason is a Node.js command line script that we have built. It's actually a Node.js binary. It's not a Node.js module. You just install Mason as a CLI process. The information is on the wiki, and Mason acts as a task runner for Node. That's it. But one of the things that Mason can do is it can talk to its site, and then it can figure out if that site is still, its cache is still valid. It's super simple. You basically do this. Mason, this might not be bigger, right? Mason revalidate, and then the URL of the site. And now it's going to talk to the site if all goes well. And then at some point your whole presentation went well, and then this one fails, of course. Okay, it's just slow. Okay, so it's a little bit slow. So it's running revalidate. It's going to fetch the cache from that endpoint. It's going to read the cache and then figure out if that cache is still valid, yes or no. This is Pages internally figuring out if the cache is still valid. It has cache validators. Basically, it's going to talk to the file system, talk to the database with a very quick query or a very quick file check to figure out if that collection that is being used is still valid. I can tell Pages to regenerate itself. You can do as force regeneration. You can say that you can do this, regenerate. I'm doing this on the whole site, but I could do it also per URL. I could do something like blog, and it will only do it for the blog URL. Now, in this case, I'm doing it for the whole site. So for everything that's in the cache. Now Pages is gonna. Yeah, that's because I'm not on HTTPS. And I forgot the command line for that. Because I want to show you. When I'm not on HTTPS, Node is going to complain, and I need to tell Node that it can run in an unsafe way. There we are. It's .u. .u probably. Yes. No. Something wrong with the JSON? Yeah, it's not working 100%. That's too bad. But that would be the idea. So my JSON broke. No, it works. That's weird. So that would be the idea, but it's not working 100% right now in my demo setup. But normally Pages would, yeah, it's not working 100%. Need to figure out why. Pages would talk to the site, figure out, get all the pages in the cache, and then start regenerating each of them. Validate. Let's revalidate what's working. And force revalidate. See if that works. I know what I'm doing wrong. Of course. It's not HTTPS, it's HTTP. Okay, there we go. This is what I wanted to show you sometimes, a couple of extra tries. So what Pages is doing now, it's talking to the cache. It's getting all the pages from the cache, all the URLs, and then it's going to go over all of them one by one to figure out if they have been modified, yes or no, by talking to each of them. All of them are still valid, so it comes back and says none of these things have been modified. What I could do is I could do regenerate, and then it's going to regenerate all of them. Revalidation simply means check if they're valid, and if they're valid, don't do anything. Regeneration means like regenerate all of them, but the result is the same because they're all still valid. But that's basically how it will work. So if you have a site with 10,000 pages and you use static caching, so basically you use Pages as a static site generator, you can regenerate or revalidate parts or your whole site using Meson. You could run that process either from your command line here, or you could run it in the cloud as an automated tool, which is what. Now this is only needed when you turn the static caching on. If you don't, then Pages will do everything for you out of the box, and there's nothing that you need to worry about. It will revalidate its cache automatically. The moment that you turn the static caching on, we're taking PHP out of the picture. And then, of course, we need an additional external process because we cannot use PHP anymore to figure out if something is still valid or the cache is still valid or not anymore. Okay. Any questions? Everybody went very quiet. What else did I have? That was it. Let's turn the browser back. Go. Yeah, you did. No problem. Have a great dinner. I'm going to do the same because it's 7 and I'll still want to watch your talk. So if there's anybody else that has a question, just let me know. And otherwise, I will jump out and then you can always find me through the chat here later. Yeah, I might. I'm not gonna bother you too much, Mark. You just go do your thing. Don't worry about me. It's actually quite nice to see that people are picking up the things that I've been working on. Can we see the recording of the session? Yes, because you're an attendee of the event. The session is being recorded for you and should be made available. I'm not sure how all that works, but that will be communicated to you after the event. You're most welcome. If you have any further questions, then you can always find and post them on the GitHub discussion forums. This is what we use for communication with the community, which is just, let me turn browser back on. So there we are. So if you go to GitHub, JoomlaTools Pages, then you can go to the discussion feature, which is a new feature of GitHub discussions, which is a small forum. Feel free to ask any questions there, and then I'm happy to help you with anything and any problems that you have. Okay, then I'll head to dinner. It was nice chatting, and I hope that everybody enjoyed the presentation. Mark, good luck later, and talk to everybody soon.